welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into, well, a truly fascinating, maybe even surprising subject from the annals of medical history. We're looking at a substance that's described with both profound destructive power and some really peculiar specific effects.
That's right. It's a deep dive into how a very potent chemical was understood and documented in a classic text. Our focus today is Carbolicum acidum, which you probably know better as phenol or carbolic acid.
Right, phenol.
And we're looking at it as it's meticulously detailed in William Boericke's Homeopathic Materia Medica.
And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to pull out most striking, sometimes, counterintuitive bits of information from this source.
Exactly.
We want to give you a shortcut, sort of, to understanding this powerful substance, but through the lens of its very specific documented characteristics. Expect some surprising facts, maybe a few aha moments about its effects.
And what's immediately fascinating, I think, is how Boericke describes carbolic acid's dual nature. He flags it as both a powerful irritant and anesthetic.
Irritant and anesthetic. Okay.
Yeah, and then you also find this initial description calling it a languid, foul, painless, destructive remedy.
Painless. Okay, that's the bit that jumps out. Because you see that, but then later on, there are mentions of terrible pains.
Right.
That sounds like a flat-out contradiction. How does that work, especially when it's called destructive?
Well, that's a really crucial distinction, and it speaks, I think, to the meticulous observation in the text. Boericke notes its core action is primarily on the central nervous system.
Okay.
So that initial painless phase, it likely refers to its immediate anesthetic effect. It leads to stupor, paralysis of sensation and motion, feeble pulse, and depressed breathing.
So it numbs things first.
Exactly. This deep CNS impact can mean the body doesn't immediately register the profound damage being done. The terrible pains would then emerge later as the tissue destruction becomes obvious, or it irritates nerve that haven't been numbed, or maybe as the body reacts to the decay itself.
Oh, okay.
Ultimately, the source notes it causes death due to paralysis of respiratory centers.
Wow. So it's a substance that can literally shut down your senses before the deeper, more agonizing consequences kick in. That's quite a chilling picture, really.
It is.
And one of the most unique symptoms, Boericke calls it very marked, a guiding symptom that really stands out, is this increased olfactory sensibility.
Yeah, the acuteness of smell.
An acute sense of smell. That seems so strange for something so destructive.
It is peculiar, isn't it? And the fact it's highlighted as very marked suggests it was a consistent, maybe even surprising observation for practitioners back then. It just adds another layer to this picture of its profound nervous system effects.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more then. Looking at the general characteristics and the key manifestations, beyond that sharp sense of smell, the source notes carbolic acid produces a general mental and bodily languor.
Like a disinclination to study with headache like a band.
Right, that band-like headache. We'll come back to that.
And what's also quite notable is the description of the pains. They are terrible, that word again, and they come and go suddenly.
Suddenly, okay.
And there's a really strong emphasis on putrid discharges across the board. This theme of, offensive, decaying bodily fluids. It's a very consistent thread throughout the entire text when describing carbolic acid's effects.
And that brings us to another really fascinating general characteristic.
Yeah.
The source states, physical exertion brings on abscess somewhere. Now, this isn't just general irritation, is it? It sounds like it points to a deeper systemic vulnerability that this substance uncovers.
That's a great point.
What do you make of that? Especially when it's tied to conditions like scarlet fever, which Boericke associates with it. He notes a marked tendency to destruction of tissue internally and fetid odor there too.
Absolutely. That observation about physical exertion and abscesses, it does imply a profound weakening of the body's defenses, creating sites for infection or breakdown just under stress. And when you tie that to scarlet fever, which is known for its rapid progression and tissue damage, and you add in the constant mention of fetid odor and also spasmodic coughs, well, it certainly paints a picture of a substance acting on really deep systemic levels.
Okay.
Predisposing the body to decay and severe inflammation, not just, localized problems.
So we've started to build this picture of carbolic acid as this incredibly potent substance. It affects the body deeply, systemically, often with this putrid character.
Yes.
Now, to really appreciate the breadth of its documented effects, let's zoom in. Let's explore how this fundamental action shows up in specific parts of the body, maybe starting with the head.
Good idea. The head symptoms are quite vivid. There's that tight feeling as if compressed by a rubber band headache we mentioned.
The rubber band headache, right?
But here's an incredibly specific detail. The headache is described as better by green tea while smoking.
While smoking. Seriously, what a precise observation.
Isn't it? And there's also orbital neuralgia over right eye, which is nerve pain around the eye socket for those listening.
Yeah, and the nose. We touched on the smell, very acute.
Yes.
But Boericke also details putrid discharge.
Yeah.
Again, and ozina with fetor and ulceration. Ozina. That's a pretty severe chronic inflammation of the nasal passages, right?
Yeah.
Leads to atrophy and that distinct foul smell.
Exactly. Which ties right back into that recurring theme of putridity. It's even mentioned in relation to influenza and resulting debility. So, post-flu weakness, maybe.
Okay, moving down to the throat, the details are quite grim here.
They are. Ulcerated patches on inside of lips and cheeks, a burning in mouth to stomach, and the fosses red and covered with exudation, the fosses being the arch at the back of the mouth.
Right.
The uvula is described as whitened and shriveled, and again, putrid discharge. Swallowing is apparently almost impossible.
Almost impossible.
Yeah, with regurgitation on swallowing liquids, especially noted in diphtheria.
And this seems like a critical point Boericke emphasizes. In diphtheria, the source specifies fetid breath and a rapid sinking of vital forces, but remarkably, but little pain. Which loops us right back to that initial painless yet destructive thing we talked about earlier.
Exactly. It highlights how the substance could sort of silently wreak havoc. The description of the face is also specific. Dusky red, white about mouth and nose.
So this internal destructive process is happening, but externally you get this very specific look.
Precisely. Now, what about the digestive system? Stomach-wise, the appetite is lost, but there's a specific desire for stimulants and tobacco.
Interesting. Stimulants and tobacco.
Yeah, and you see constant belching, nausea, vomiting, which is described as dark olive green. There's heat rises up esophagus.
Reflux.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Flatulent distension of stomach and abdomen with painful flatulence often marked in one part of the bowel. It's strongly associated with fermentative dyspepsia with bad taste and breath. Makes sense.
Yeah, it all sounds pretty unpleasant. And for the stool, the descriptions are equally strong, again, hitting that putrid theme. Constipation with very offensive breath, or stools that are bloody, like scrapings of intestines.
Oof.
Yeah. And a symptom called great tenesmus is noted. That's that awful feeling of constantly needing to empty your bowels, even when they're empty, often with straining and pain.
Right. Horrible feeling.
And again, we see diarrhea, stools thin, black, putrid, reinforcing that pattern of offensive discharges.
The urine doesn't escape either. It's described as almost black.
Almost black. Wow.
It's linked to diabetes in the text, and also irritable bladder in old men with frequent urination at night of probable prostatic nature. And Boericke even gives a specific dosage recommendation here. Use 1x.
1x, okay. The first decimal dilution, so a lower potency for that specific symptom.
Seems so, yeah. Suggesting a particular approach for that presentation.
Okay, shifting to the female system. The pervasive characteristic, surprise, surprise, is that discharge is always offensive.
Always offensive. Consistent.
Very consistent. Specifics include pustules about vulva containing bloody pus, an agonizing backache across loins with dragging down thighs, and pain in left ovary, worse walking in open air.
Worse in open air. Specific.
Yeah. There are erosions of cervix, fetid acrid discharge, leukorrhea in children, that's vaginal discharge, for clarity and irritating leukorrhea causing itching and burning. It's even noted in puerperal fever with offensive discharge, which is that dangerous infection after childbirth.
This truly paints a comprehensive picture, doesn't it? Irritation, decay across multiple systems, all marked by that characteristic offensive discharge.
Absolutely. And when we look at the extremities,
We find cramps in forepart of leg, close to tibia during walking, and gnawing pains in shin bones. It also mentions a connection to arthritis,
okay. And finally, the skin.
described with itching vesicles, with burning pain, and a tendency for burns to ulcerate, which, makes sense given the substance's known corrosive nature.
Yeah, that fits. Okay, so we've covered the symptom picture in detail. Now let's unpack the relationships, antidotes, and dosages, because this is where the historical context of Boericke's observations really comes through, I think.
Definitely. The source compares carbolic acid to other substances like ars, that's arsenicum, album, creosote, which is creosotum, and carbovegetabilis, common remedies.
But what's particularly interesting, and honestly, a bit unexpected, is the specific comparison to crizarubin,
Ah, yes.
for its local use in ringworm of the scalp. And then another fascinating parallel is drawn with guano. Yes, guano like bat or bird droppings.
Guano.
Right, for its similar violent headache is from a band around head. There's that band again. And itching of nostrils, back, thighs, genitals with symptoms like hay fever. It's incredible how diverse the sources of comparison are in this text.
It really highlights the depth, doesn't it? And the breadth of the materia medica. They're drawing connections based purely on symptomatic similarity, regardless of the source substance.
Truly. Now, for the antidotes, the substances suggested to counteract its effects.
The source lists alcohol, vinegar, chalk, iod, and Glauber's salt in watery solution. Specific counteragents.
Okay, but here's where we hit a fascinating paradox, right? In the documentation itself. While the source lists glycerin and vegetable oils as incompatible substances,
Right, incompatible.
it then, in the dosage context, discusses Bartlett's method. And this method is for a crystal solution, 25%, in equal parts of water and glycerin.
Ah, water and glycerin.
Exactly. Recommending a dose of 20 minims well diluted 3 times daily. How do we reconcile an incompatibility with a direct instruction to use glycerin in a solution?
That is a perfect aha moment from the text itself. It definitely raises an important question for anyone studying these historical documents.
Yeah.
It could suggest maybe that the incompatibility refers to a direct, undiluted reaction, whereas in a highly diluted solution, the interaction might be different or perhaps even mitigated. Or it might just highlight the nuances, maybe even the evolving understanding within homeopathic practice at the time. Perhaps one school of thought had different observations or methods than another, even if they ended up compiled in the same text.
That makes sense. Different perspectives.
It also notes, crucially, that the solution must be absolutely pure. Purity was key.
That's a great point about the potential for different contexts or evolving practices. And speaking of dosage, beyond Bartlett's specific glycerin method, the suggested potencies generally range from the 3rd to 30th potency.
A wide range.
Yeah. And it also specifically notes phenol in arthritis, according to Goodnow, another practitioner, which reinforces that these weren't just theoretical lists, they were based on, live observed applications.
Exactly. It shows the precise nature of the documentation, even with these occasional internal inconsistencies on certain points, like the glycerin. The focus is clearly on specific preparations and applications for specific conditions, as observed at the time. It really offers a window into historical clinical decision making.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for us, for you listening? This deep dive into Carbolicum acidum has, I think it's uncovered a fascinating and incredibly detailed picture of this substance.
Definitely.
All from just this one historical medical text. It provides such a granular look at symptoms across so many body systems, highlighting its broad and often very specific documented effects.
And it really reinforces how this kind of deep dive can offer you a quick yet still thorough understanding of a substance's characteristics from a very particular viewpoint. It gives you this unique insight into a specific historical medical perspective that's frankly far more detailed than just a simple chemical description.
It really is. This whole deep dive into Carbolicum acidum, it just reveals a substance described with such a specific and often paradoxical array of symptoms. From that initial painless nature to the terrible pains it can clearly manifest, and that weirdly specific effect on smell. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How these incredibly detailed observations of substances' effects, even when they come from different medical philosophies or eras, how they contribute to our broader understanding of human physiology and pathology, even today.